Welcome back to the One More K podcast. We on episode number 23. Excited to have you guys back on board. Thanks for joining us. My name is Marcus. As you probably know by now, we have Ned from Singapore. Good evening, Ned.
Good morning, evening, afternoon, everybody.
And we have Kris here on the show. Kris, the founder and CEO of Asia Trailmasters, joining us today from Belgium. Hello, Kris.
Yeah, good afternoon from my side. I'm in Belgium here. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show.
Excited to have you. We go back some time. You are also one of the people in trail running in Asia. You've been around the block for a long time. Not that you are that old. I don't want to say that, but I want to say that you are really probably to be found the most besides athletes on races
and Marcus
in Asia.
Can't possibly be as old as me, so it's all good.
That's true. We will always respect your age, Ned, and we will keep you as the most senior in the room. I will not forget that, right? But Kris, thanks for joining us. We will have an exciting session coming up about Asia Trailmasters, or called ATM. I probably will say ATM more than Asia Trailmasters, just because I speak very fast and it's easy to say ATM. Well, how are you doing, Kris? You are in Belgium. How come? What's going on?
Well, we are renting an apartment here still in Ghent, city of Ghent in Belgium. And I just finished a working trip, a business trip in China, which is the second hat that I'm wearing professionally, as you may know. So I have the Asia Trailmaster cap, but I'm also wearing a race director cap in China for the company Nordic Race. And we organize cycling events and also running events in China. And next month I have a 3-day cycling, running and mountain biking festival coming up in the grasslands of Inner Mongolia in Siguchi. It's also an event that has been around since 2007, so quite a while. And we have basically finished all the technical preparation, and now we're just waiting for the numbers to come in, the registration numbers. And then at the end of next week, I fly back to Asia, first for the Ultra Trail Singapore. And that's a new race in the Asia Trailmaster calendar. And from there, I will go back to China for this event in Inner Mongolia.
So I did not know you did races in China. I not in Inner Mongolia, but about 10 years ago, I did Mongolian, the Italian dude, his race. I did that for the 900K, 7 days. What an amazing. I haven't been to Inner Mongolia, but Mongolia, amazing place.
It is. I mean, I love the place. And so just for the listeners, maybe, so Inner Mongolia is different from Mongolia country, right? So Inner Mongolia is an autonomous region within China, bordering the country Mongolia, obviously. And it's a great culture. Also, the Mongolian culture. It's if you like nature and the outdoors, Mongolia is one of the places to go to once a lifetime, I would say. I'm also having a big cycling background, and Mongolia has that as well. In the days of the Soviet Union, still Mongolia was actually quite strong in that part of the world. And nowadays, also within Asia, they have some very strong riders. And most of these riders that are now in their late 20s, early 30s, we have seen them coming up in our event in China as well. So it's been great to see how some of them are performing now on the professional circuit in Asia. And one rider, Jamba, has even made it to Spain and is part of a pro-continental team Burgos in Spain at the moment.
Oh, wow.
And I still remember Jamba coming to our event in Siguchi as a 16-year-old. On the mountain bike, so I know his entire trajectory, so to speak, and it's just wonderful to see how these guys, the passion that they have also for their sport, and the mental toughness they have to keep on training and to keep on fighting to make things happen. Because if you live in Mongolia, and Nat, you've been there in summer, it is very hot in summer, but in wintertime, it's minus 40 degrees sometimes in Ulaanbaatar. So
the harsh conditions.
Very
from
harsh.
the Genghis Khan horse riders to now the bicycle riders. That is quite a shift, but not surprising.
I didn't, we shouldn't spend too long going down the kind of Mongolia rabbit hole, but I've been there a couple of times actually, and the two things struck me is, or three things: amazing people, but it made me think. You say beautiful scenery. Like I would say to anybody listening to this podcast, if you want to see what happened to the world before humans messed it up, go to Mongolia. Like, it really is as if the humans haven't touched it and messed it up. And the other thing is, I'm sure Genghis Khan wasn't a nice man, but when I went to the museum, he was quite an effective man. I was absolutely blown away that Mongolia used to rule a decent chunk of the world.
Absolutely. I think it was at some point the biggest empire even in the world.
Yeah, it was
early 14th century, I think. Yeah.
To the point that probably everyone in Asia has now some DNA traced back to Genghis Khan. Even a friend of mine here in America did this DNA test, 23andMe, and it showed 0.something% of Genghis Khan. Well, sorry, not
Wow.
in Asia, that must have been coming from Genghis Khan. Anyway,
well, I have blood group B, and apparently blood group B is very rare in Europe, but very common in the the northeast of China. So Mongolia, Manchuria. So who knows?
That maybe explains why you spend so much time there. You feel more home in China.
Maybe.
We go.
I do feel more at home in Asia now. Yeah.
Wonderful. So we're going to have exciting news coming up as well. So we're going to go through some of the news docket for now. Then we're going to switch back to, of course, ATM and especially a lot of things happening in China. That's also why we got you on the show, Kris, to really understand more what's going on up north. First and foremost, some sad news, actually. We had a race in France happening where one runner unfortunately died at the Ultra Trail du Haut-Giffre. I think that's how it's called. UTHG. It's a race in France happening over the weekend. Due to some bad weather, someone died and 3 others were evacuated to hospitals with severe injuries. Of course, that's a sad tragedy. We never like to see this happening. It doesn't happen too often, luckily. But yeah, it's one of the first times in a year, I think, that I see in Europe an event with.
I read this on I Run Far as well. Definitely very sad for everybody. Obviously, we had in China a few years ago an incident. We've had incidents at other races. But I think just our reality, we're out in the mountains. And mountains are big and scary and dangerous, and more people are doing it. And this, incredibly sadly, won't be the last time, because our sport is not. I was going to say our sport is not chess. I don't want to pour any shade on chess, but I think it's less likely. We are a sport that it's dangerous. And we love it for that. I think if it was all in safe confines, so obviously nobody wants anybody to die, but I think if we fooled ourselves to think that this will never happen again, but that's not right either.
For sure. Kris, you mentioned before starting the show, there was another incident in China recently. What happened there?
Yeah, there was a race in Zhejiang province. I believe it was Ninghai, which is a race that used to be part of the UTMB circuit before COVID, but now not anymore. And also there, all of a sudden, there was a very, very bad weather, thunderstorms. And if I'm not mistaken, about 25 people, 25 runners, they were kind of not exactly lost, but nobody knew where they were exactly. And they had to shelter. That was the point. And at the end of the day, there were no casualties. I mean, nobody died or anything like that. But the fact that these 24 runners were off the radar, again, created a bit of an alarm in China with the authorities. The sporting authorities, who are very sensitive about trail running at the moment, and especially ultra running, since the Gansu incident that you referred to earlier in 2021, where, what was it again? 23 people died, actually, right? Including some of the elite runners in China. So what happened there in Zhejiang province, it was kind of a reminder again of the dangers, the inherent dangers of mountain running. And in China, this is becoming a very sensitive thing now. We also discovered this last year because we wanted to do a grassland 50K run, as opposed to the marathon that we always have had. And that 50K run is now considered ultra. It's longer than a marathon distance, and the authorities, they demand a lot more documentation before they provide a permit for that. We managed to do it, but if you want to do a 100K race or even a 100 miles in China now, you require a lot more protocols and bureaucratic maneuvers and all that to make it actually happen. And I wonder in this context, how that will develop further, because like you say, when you go into the mountains, the weather can change at any point in time. And there is also a little bit of a macho culture in some parts of the world when it comes to trail running, right? People going to the mountains without any rescue, without any emergency blankets, or without any rain jackets, without any warm gear or anything like that, which is what happened in Gansu. And I think that is still happening now, not only in China, but also in other countries. So that is also a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a balance between how much does the organizer need to take risk of and then they need to be responsible for this versus the runner being responsible for his or her own risk. And you can't have both. So it's always going to be flipping back and forth. I mean, every country has different regulations. We heard in Malaysia, Eugene told us that you have to have a mountaineering guide now as a license in order to go up into the mountains above certain type of elevation. And I think China is also we know a bit more of a top-down country, so I'm sure they are making sure that they have regulations in place. Other countries like America, it's you just do what you want to do and then good luck. So in any case, anyone out there, please take care of yourself and make sure you have the right equipment on you. I think it comes down to equipment, whatever you do out there.
Yeah, mandatory gear lists are there for a reason. First,
correct.
Yeah,
correct. Talking about equipment, a quick update on the Spring Energy saga at the moment, just because it just got out last few days and the Reddit is exploding again. We have to unfortunately cover it. Not that I'm a big fan of those things, but it's a good learning for the industry. Spring finally, after 6 weeks, came out with a statement. It's also on the screen, anyone watching. Basically, it was also going to be in the show notes, by the way. But basically, Spring came out somewhat. I think it's actually better if Ned summarizes, because I think, Ned, you found a good point yesterday about this.
I'm gonna look. Spring. I'm sure Spring, you're not listening, because we're just a little podcast, and there be it to throw stones. I don't want to throw stones, but guys, that apology sucked. That was like the weakest non-apology. Oh, apparently, dudes, just own it. Just own it. Just say, we messed up. We're really sorry. And we have to do better. This 3-page, whiny non-apology, I actually think it's worse than the original mistake. It is, to me, it is worse than the original mistake. It is this. It's almost like they didn't do it, never happened. It may just have happened once. It's funny, Marcus, because you are in the Reddit streets. You hang out in Reddit world. I don't. You sent it to me, and oh my God, I spent like an hour reading all the comments, and there was literally not one positive. And look, there's only 10 people there, but basically they were like, they said things like, the perceived radio silence. Dude, it's not perceived. You were silent. Or, there's only 10 people, so No, I don't know. Like, if you mess up. So I'm going to say what they should have done when KFC ran out of chicken. So I don't know if you know this story, but KFC ran out of chicken. They're a chicken shop, and they ran out of chicken. You know what they did? They have these buckets that have KFC. They put on the bucket FCK. We ran out of chicken. We're sorry. And everybody loved them. Everybody was like, gold. FCK. We ran out of chicken. Sorry. End of. Everybody was like, oh, you're cool. Don't worry. Done. It wasn't like, oh, we couldn't get chickens. The lorries didn't arrive. It wasn't our fault. Anyway, I'll stop here. Spring, like, if you thought you'd messed up, you really crapped yourself on this one.
It's called awesome sauce. You could have called it not so awesome sauce for a joke, and that's it, move on. But yeah, I think it was a statement written by lawyers. I think they're very worried about some kind of legal action. But yeah, I don't think it really helped anyone in the community. Unfortunately, again, I think it's not great to see, but yeah, you got to own it as a brand. You got to own your communication as well. And not the last time we're going to see this for sure.
Brands can make mistakes. We all do. Everyone makes mistakes. I could shut my company down. And I just put it out there and said, I'm sorry, it didn't work. That's life.
Yep.
Here it is.
Yep.
Done.
Very true.
Anyway, it is life.
Moving on, I think we'll have some just, highlighting something from Asia again. Well, in this case, actually, it's how the BBC is covering our good friend Natalie Dow. Amazing to see her effort now being covered in global news. Anyone watching again on the screen, you can see that the BBC covered her 1,000-kilometer journey from Thailand to Singapore. And yeah, amazing how the world looks at those efforts now and what she gets covered.
She is an influencer, one of the early ones. She started her business Rockstar Arms 10 years ago. I mean, she set this up to do this. She raised a lot of money. She phoned into BBC. She knows what she's doing. But what an epic run. 84K through Malaysia on the streets, like literally on the streets, with lorries bearing down on her. It's not on the trails, but, good on her. And, you're not meant to say a woman's age, but she says it. She's 52. Like, she's getting this stuff done at 52. Good on her. I'm a good friend of Natalie, and it was gold. I think there were some days when because she did 12 days straight, and she finished on World Running Day. So, like, she couldn't have taken any more days. I mean, she had a lot of support, but yeah, epic run. And great to see it on the BBC.
And also equally great is to see that Jasmin Paris, the one we also featured on the podcast before, the first woman to finish the Barclay Marathon, is now on the MBE list, which is the Member of the Order of the British Empire. It's the King's Birthday Honours list. And as a 40-year-old woman to get featured on the list is very special. As a runner, even more special. So we're excited for Jasmin, who is getting now a lot of attention in the UK, especially given what she's done this year at the Barclay Marathon. You're British, Ned. How do you feel about that?
The King knows about ultra running, if the King knows all of his ZBEs. But I'm not a royalist, but I am British. I still have good feelings for the royal family. And if the royal family gives you an award, a medal, I think that's quite special. And I don't know Jasmin, but interestingly, Marcus, I don't know if you knew, she gave a talk to the Singapore Ultra Running Association last week. So they had a Zoom call with her. She's very humble, very cool. I wasn't on it. I was working, but I think it's great. I think it's fabulous. As we talked about, Marcus, ultra running are good people. If ultra running around the world, nobody would be fighting. We'd all just be chilling. So the more we get into the public domain, must be good.
Very true. That wraps up the news section.
Marcus, I have one last note. I'm going to talk about Laz at the end, because but on now is 6 days in the Dome, and the 6 days in the Dome is 6-day racing in America. Zach Bitter just ran 11 hours, 55 minutes for 1,200 miles in the Dome. 6 days in the Dome is 6-day racing, as we talked about before. 6-day racing came from the idea you couldn't run on a Sunday because that was the Lord's Day and you must not run. Not content with that, Marcus, they decided to have a 10-day event. So right now, some people are running 10 days around a 400-meter track, and people think I run a long way. So just to let you know, people, you're not running a long way, because some people are running 10 days straight around a track in America somewhere.
Wow.
Madness.
Wow. That is madness indeed. Amazing. Thanks, Nat, for the input. Anything on your news docket, Kris? Anything that happened in the last 7 days in your side of the world?
Well, it's actually a funny question, because it's been just one of the most quiet weeks of the whole year in the Asia Trade Master Circuit. So there was no event last weekend. But before that, so we had a great event in Brunei. And in the beginning of June, so the 1st of June, we had Tioman 50, the new event from MMTF consultant, Eugene Tan. And that event was fantastic. I was there myself. So that's really a recommended 50K run. It's not going to be longer also next year, 50K, but it's a really great 50K.
Wow. Good. Nice.
And
thank you.
How was there? So maybe that's
how famous you won that race as the first female and first runner overall. Amazing effort. Great to see the coverage there. Thank you. I actually was reading your coverage of the race, so it's very helpful to follow it from the global point of view. This show is sponsored by Lekker Nutrition, and I can actually finally say it is sponsored because I've got finally my Lekker bar with me here. So I'm going to have my breakfast now, having the cacao banana bar, little cheeky plug of this company that I heard is called Lekker. Anyway, Kris, over to you now. Excited to talk about ATM. So why did you start the business of ATM? I was really trying to figure out, let's go into the business side of you doing ATM, Asia Trail Masters. Take us through the journey of from becoming an entrepreneur essentially in this world of trail running in Asia?
Well, we have to go back 10 years because it's exactly 10 years ago that I started writing everything down. The Asia Trailmaster Championship Series. At the time, we actually left out the championship. It was just Asia Trailmaster Series. And how did it start? Well, basically, this was the boom era of trail running in Asia, including Hong Kong, China. So I was invited to take part in the first edition of Trans-Lantau in Hong Kong by Pierre-Arnaud Lamayan, who was the co-founder of that event. It was not called Trans-Lantau yet. It was called the Rate Light Lantau 50, something like that. There was also 100K, but I ran the 50K. And that was my first ever trail running event because I had just quit my competitive cycling career, to call it like that. And I was looking to do something else because I liked still being in in shape, right? And I went back to my first love, which was running. I was a good runner as a teenager here in Belgium, including cross-country running. I took part in that race and I really loved the experience. And then I started to think a little bit like, what can I do with this? Because I was already working also in China as a race director, as I just mentioned. But I wanted to do something also outside of China. And so I was beginning to think, maybe we can combine a couple of races in several parts of Asia, put it all under one calendar to make it easy to find for people and create a bit of a competition with it. And that is kind of how it started, slowly. The first season, 2015, was also, I can say, it was very modest. It was kind of, seeing where it leads. But it took off and people liked it. And like I said, people discovered races that were taking place in Southeast Asia, especially, but also Japan, in Korea, also in China. The Taigu race, for example, in China, which is now the biggest trail running event there, was part of our ATM calendar in the first couple of years when that race was set up. And then year after year, it just grew bigger and bigger. And especially by 2017, 2018, we had some real good competition already for the championship title, as we then like to call it. Yeah. So Asia Trailmaster, as you know, is an annual competition, right? So after every season, the ranking, everybody goes back to 0 points. Yeah. Then we start anew. And like that, every season has its own narrative, has its own story. And that is also what's making it very interesting for people to follow. Because all these runners who do well in our series, in our championship, they become like, I wouldn't say household names, but at least they become well-known athletes within the region here in Asia. I think I can say, and the runners, they will acknowledge also, that runners like Tahira Naimunisa, Ruf Teresia, Alessandro Sherpa, they would never have become known if they didn't run in Asia Trailmaster. Yeah. So
you're like an incubator of Asian athletes in that sense. Not that you're, of course, incubating them personally, but I think it's a great platform to discover Asian athletes, if that's a fair say.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so we focus a lot on the competition aspects for these elite runners, as we like to call them. In the meantime, we also have another individual challenge, which is called the Grandmaster Quest. And that is non-performance based. So everybody can become a Grandmaster. What you need to do is finish 6 ultras within 2 years. Yeah, ATM ultras. And that has actually become more popular than the championship after COVID, which is a very interesting development. But it's also a global trend, I would say, that fewer people care about the race in trail running. Yeah. I also heard this on a popular podcast from an American guy in Colorado. He's saying exactly the same. Also, apparently in America, the interest in competition is declining. So people just want to go to the trails and finish the course within the cutoff times. Yeah.
Interestingly, so I used to do Ironman, and obviously there's a different discussion about Ironman UTMB. I'm not that, but they started non-pro races. And there was this really big discussion. Would anybody go if there were no professionals? And everybody went. Because for most, if you are like a real fan of the sport, I remember when I was in it, I wanted to see Crowe or Macca or Norman Stadler or Jan Frodeno. But I think for most people, we talked about the one and done, or people either getting into it and starting. I think you're right, Kris. I think the heartbeat of the sport, while I love competition, the heartbeat of the sport is the people coming and, in the marathon majors, you do the 6 marathon majors, you get your medal, and that drives. I mean, look, both as a businessman, you want to drive it, but I think it's a great thing. I think that Grandmaster Quest makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's it was also mentioned on your own podcast with Florian Lamblin a few weeks ago. I was listening to that one. So that's the CEO of UTMB International. And he also made that comment, or at least he was referring to it by saying that, trail running is not about performance, it's about event experience. Yeah. And that is actually what I also discovered, especially after COVID. So that there's less interest in the competitive aspect of the sport. And it's an interesting point because, where is the sport going? Are we going into that direction of, okay, it's only about event experience, having fun, which is fine. Yeah. But just like you, Nat, I also have a very competitive background. I like competition. So for me, is a bit uncomfortable in a way. So, it's an interesting development, and I think it also stems from the fact that there is no real governance of the sport, in trail running. So we have ITRA, but ITRA is largely absent from anything. We'll see how that develops further.
Yeah. The business model of ATM, I was wondering about that one. So basically, the events are paying you a license fee to become an ATM race. And what else is going on in the business world of ATM?
Well, yeah, so there's a membership fee. So events that want to join the series, they first need to go through a candidate race trajectory. So especially if we don't know the event organizer or we don't know the race director, we first want to check them out. So we want to test how everything is organized, because of course, after so many years now, we want to make sure that the races that are on the championship calendar are well organized. Yeah. So that's the first thing. And then if everything goes fine, they can join the calendar. And then there is indeed an Asia Trail Master membership fee to be paid. And then there's also the race coverage that we do. So after all those years, myself and my core team, like Mark Jimin, Amy Kaur, Richard Akol and Christine Salazar, we have a lot of experience of Asian trail in the meantime, and that has value. And if we do the race coverage, we know what we're doing and we know who the runners are. Yeah, so we can actually give commentary which has a lot more detail and insight than any random person would give. Who doesn't know the runners or the event or the history of trail running in the country. Yeah. So and these two elements, they basically make up the agreement, the cooperation agreement. And just in case it's not a big business at all. So this has gone from kind of a hobby into kind of an exercise, and I'm not earning any money from it. So everything goes back into the company and gets reinvested especially to increase the quality of the race coverage that we do.
I can imagine that, because many race organizers who have been on the show or telling me off the record, it's very hard to make money from racing, race organizing, because even UTMB made a loss 2 years ago, until 2 years ago, and so and Asian races I think are no different there. So I was like, how if races can't really make money, if you sit on top of them, basically, how can you make money? I can't imagine that must be easy.
It is, but we are now season 9 and we're going to launch actually season 10 tomorrow. So the first announcement about season 10 is coming tomorrow. So we're still alive, and there are obstacles, of course. It's sometimes very frustrating as well. Again, after COVID, we noticed that in Asia especially, apparently it's also in the rest of the world, but let's stick to Asia. The budgets are shrinking for most organizers. The event attendance is declining in most countries. Vietnam is an exception. But everywhere I go, Philippines, Malaysia, even Hong Kong, numbers are down compared to a couple of years ago, which is another interesting development of the sport. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So, sorry, that's actually an interesting point. So, the participation numbers are declining.
Yes. Yeah, we noticed that.
What do you think is driving that?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. Probably one of them, of course, has to do with the COVID crisis has been very tough on a lot of people, and especially on their ability to spend money for leisure activities. That is not only in Asia. Again, in America, in that same podcast I was referring to, there was also talk of a decline of 11% from 2023 to 2022. So I think, but another main reason for me is that during the COVID crisis, a lot of people discovered the outdoors and discovered the trails and really enjoyed it, but then also discovered the GPX files and the sports watches and how to use them. So you don't really need to join an event anymore to go into the forest or into the mountain or into the desert, even if you have a good GPS, you can do it all by yourself. Yeah. And why spend $100 as a random figure on the registration fee if you can just, decide any given day to do a certain course trail somewhere. Yeah. You can even then wait to make sure that the weather is fine on that weekend that you want to go. I think that also plays a part. Because in the end, people who like the outdoors, they also like to be alone a little bit. They don't want to be necessarily with hundreds of people at the same time, especially not on single trails. Yeah? It's actually something that a very prominent runner in my series once told me as well. I mean, he was based in Europe also during COVID, and he did not enjoy running in Europe at all because there were simply too many people in the big races in Europe, he said.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned earlier is that you are very active on covering the races, like with live stream and Facebook and so on. And I'm sure you have some data to share on which countries, which regions, which age groups. What is the data of the live stream telling you of the trends and the demographics and the regions that are watching and engaging with the sport?
Well, it's a bit of a difficult question, perhaps, in terms of precise numbers. But what we can tell is that the Facebook is still by far the biggest platform in Asia. So there are exceptions, like Indonesia, it's Instagram, very clearly. But in most of the other countries, still it's Facebook by far the biggest. So we have, of course, been focusing a lot on our Facebook platform for race coverage especially. And the numbers are still increasing there. So the online viewership of our live streams and our video updates and all that are increasing quite significantly even this year, which is something we are very happy about. Of course, like I just mentioned, whatever comes into the company, we spend on that as well. And there's also more and more event organizers within ATM who recognize that if they can hire 2 or 3 ATM reporters, to use a media term, we can provide better quality output. Yeah. If I'm alone or Mark is alone or Amy is alone, it's more difficult, especially if there's 2 race distances, like there's a 100K in the event and there's a 50K event. It's very hard to cover both in the same time, in the same way. Yeah. So the quality of our video output is improving, and that shows also in the numbers, for sure. We also have a YouTube channel, and there we can also see that many people go back later, not necessarily on the weekend of the race, but later they also go there to revisit or maybe for the first time watch the videos.
Isn't it amazing how much it's changed the live streaming? I can imagine, Kris, when you put on a race 9 years ago, you certainly didn't have live streaming. It has changed beyond belief.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and one of the effects of that is the decline in photography, in quality photography. Yeah, I mean, with Asia Trainmaster, I've had the luck to be working with 2 fantastic photographers, Kirk Kenny, based in Hong Kong, and William Chiang, based in Singapore. And Kirk already in 2019 said that he would be taking a step back because of family. I mean, he became a father and so on. But also William has become a little bit frustrated, we can say, because people don't necessarily see the value anymore of his photo work. I mean, they see the value, but they don't want to pay for it anymore. So they don't want to recruit him anymore because everything goes to video at the moment. Yeah, people prefer now to have some videos, and like in Indonesia, for example, Insta stories is the big thing there as well. Yeah?
And William's photos. I mean, I know William better than Bert because he's in Singapore. William's photos are amazing.
He won prizes at the end of the day. I mean, he won prizes for his shoots at an ATM event at the time, BTS in Bromo. I think it was 2017, might be 2018, forgot. But he won prizes in Japan for his work there. Yeah.
I heard you say, and this is really amazing, that obviously you've been running Asia Trail Masters. You understand how hard race directing is. Despite the fact there are clearly more people in the outdoors, you said there are less trail runners at races in Hong Kong, Philippines, everywhere apart from Vietnam. Is that correct,
Yes,
Kris?
that's what. We discussed this briefly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the news that I get from all the organizers in Asia Trail Master, and which is also supported by data in the US. Yeah? And the only country that seems to be escaping this trend is Vietnam, where everything is still going up. Yeah.
But do you think that's a function of less runners per race or less runners overall? Because
No,
you could
I think it's
make
per
argument
race. I think it's per race. Yeah, and it's
Okay.
like we just discussed, right? So I think during COVID times, I mean, many more people rediscovered the outdoors and the opportunities to go into the nature. But they also found out how the sports watch and the GPX file work. Yeah, so people go out by themselves. Yeah, they go to the trails by themselves. They don't necessarily spend $100 in registration fees anymore to attend an event with hundreds or maybe even thousands of other runners. They just go with a bunch of friends, with maybe their local running community, and they go, to the trails and join them at a more leisurely pace without the stress of cutoff times or something like that. Yeah, so I think that also plays a role. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, but the argument could be on the other side is it's just more races happening, and you have, of course, the bigger races who keep growing, make it more expensive, so less people join them. But you have also a number of smaller local races who are offering maybe similar experience for half the price, maybe smaller. And so, that's what I'm saying. Maybe the absolute number is actually not changing. And I think the data, what I've seen in the West of ultra marathons, has not rebounded yet completely to pre-COVID levels, but it has reached almost the same level again. But yeah, I think the big races are, struggling. Like with anything in life, when you grow bigger, you have to, hire more people. You have to make it more expensive. I know people who are put off by this, but I also see in Vietnam, for example, that you have a lot of small races offering now a lot of, cool enough experiences for a 25K or even just, like a 12K run. And they're growing quite fast. I think that's where I'm wondering if it's just the bigger races.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, I think. Of course, there's also a trend that the short distance and the 50Ks are becoming much more popular than the long ultras. Yeah, that's also very clear. Even a lot of, let's say, elite runners in Asia, they also don't want to do so many 100Ks anymore. They're all dropping down in distance. Because they also say we like to do more races. Yeah, we don't want to focus on one long ultra and then we have to recover for a month. So they prefer to do more 50Ks. I think maybe another thing is in this context is sports tourism. Yeah, I mean, trail runners, who are they? Are they again coming back to what we said in the beginning, and the potential decline in interest in the race? Trail runners, are they athletes or are they more like tourists? Active tourists. Yeah. And then, of course, you have the thing, okay, once you've been there, next time you go somewhere else. Yeah. You don't go to the same place every year.
I think that's actually a very good point. And we have not really digged into this tourism part yet. And it comes back to experience, right? You pay for the experience. You pay for that one trip into the mountain. Once you've done it, nice. Didn't really matter if you win or don't win, but you had at least the experience. And so you would choose another mountain or another amazing landscape the next time you go somewhere, whether it's in your own country or in a different country. I think that's where, Vietnam, for example, is a fabulous trail destination for many Europeans and Americans, knowing they come over there for that one race. And of course, they will never come back because it just was part of their holiday.
I think, but it's also for the towns. Again, coming back to Ironman, originally Kona in Ironman, they adored it until they overrun it, and then they came away from it. We're nowhere. Well, maybe Chamonix. I imagine the people who live in Chamonix are a bit tired of the insane invasion that they get every so often. But certainly in Asia, Kris, none of the towns has yet been overwhelmed by trail tourism. Is that correct?
You know, in Doi Tanon, there were some issues, right? After, what was it, 2 years ago? So they had to change location because the local people didn't want it anymore. So they had to move it to another venue.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, you're right. At the moment in Asia, it's not as much. What you say about Chamonix is correct, but of course, the Chamonix people, they also are quiet because that 1 week at the end of August is giving them a lot of money too. So I mean, they also understand that it's very important for them still. But yeah, I mean, I also heard about the Kona thing about Ironman triathlon. And I think now they're moving. Also, now it's becoming biannual, right? So 1 year it's in Kona and the other year it's in Nice. So.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, look, that whole, anyway, yeah, you know, the reality is you can only fit 2,000 bikes on the pier, i.e. 2,000 bikes. So instead of just accepting it, like Gordy Ainsley did at Western States, like Laz does at Barclay, no, we're going to send the men and the women into different worlds. France 1 year, Kona the other year. Anyway, I won't go on because I'm just going to rant. I think Andrew Messick went down the private equity route and did a money grab. And honestly, I think that's why UTMB gets crap, because Ironman's a money grab. And hey, I'm a capitalistic too, but
yeah,
you know, it was such a blatant money grab that it left a slight distaste in people's mouths.
Yeah. I mean, UTMB is still in the early phase in Asia, right? So let's see how that all develops. But as you know, I mean, UTMB in Asia is divided between actually UTMB and the other part of Asia is Ironman controlled. So, yeah.
Which is actually the question I got to ask you. Like, how has your world changed since UTMB is entering Asia more?
It's not really affected Asia Trailmaster that much, I would say. It has more a bit of an effect on the overall Asian scene, because of course, you know, UTMB is a global series and Asia Trailmaster is purely focused on Asia. It's a purely regional series. And of course, UTMB has a lot bigger budget than Asia Trailmaster will ever have. It has an effect. I was speaking with a photographer from Thailand at the Tioman event, somebody I know very well because he started his photography career at the Telakau events in Thailand in 2016-17. They were part of Asia Trailmaster, and he actually learned a lot from, he said, from me, but especially from William Chung, the photographer we just mentioned. So he's always very talkative whenever he sees me still. And he's now also shooting for the UTMB events. But he told me that in Thailand, a lot of races have disappeared now as a result of the two Bai UTMB events, which is also related to all the Thai runners. They want to go to the Bai UTMB events. They are more expensive, so they skip the other races. And then there's the thing with the government permits and the park permits in Chiang Mai that have become apparently more expensive or even unable to get them in the case of some organizers. So there is a bit of an effect apparently already in Thailand now, but it's early days. You know, maybe we should not, go too deep into that now. But it was an interesting thing that he mentioned because he's not going to say that for no reason. You know, he's concerned about what is happening with the trail scene in Thailand.
Just one last point on the business before we go to the China part. But curious, where do you want to take ATM? Like, what's from a business point of view, from a community point of view, what's the journey looking like for the next 5 years? Like, where do you take this?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, so we're going to have the 10-year anniversary next year. And the idea is to have a bit more focus on the Grandmaster Quest, because that has become the most popular part of Asia Trailmaster. But we will not skip the championship, because also for myself, I really enjoy the competition, seeing the runners competing against each other several times a year. Yeah. So they become really like, also in my mind, they are like stars, and I enjoy seeing how they progress or regress. But the Grandmaster Quest will get more prominence. We're also going to develop an app for Asia Trail Masters, so it will be a bit easier also for people to find information, because it has also come to my attention that websites and Google search is apparently becoming a thing of my generation, but not of the young generation anymore. So I think an app will hopefully help with, boosting the availability of the information for the younger generation, especially. And I mean, of course, I hope that we can also keep on improving the live streaming part and the broadcasting. Because what I did not mention, I was also, when I was very young, just coming from university, and even during my university time in Belgium, I was also working for a newspaper in Belgium. So I have a bit of a journalistic background, sports journalism, and I still really enjoy that. And I really would like to take that further as well.
So is it fair to say that ATM is also, or might be even more, become a media business?
Yes, we want to strengthen the media angle for sure. Yeah.
Good. So I know a few people out there who want to buy media businesses.
Well, but in any case, it's what I mentioned before, right? So we have this 10 years of experience within the Asia Trail Master team, and I think we should use it. And I hope that people also, see the benefit of that. Yeah.
I mean, I've been a massive learner, fan of social media. I use it to a tiny extent myself on LinkedIn I post once a week. I post a 1 minute running. Like it for me, I get 20, 30,000 views. I get people asking me to do work for them. It just works. And that's just my tiny little thing. And when I look at it, I said to you, Marcus, last week, we're talking about this guy, William Googe. My Instagram feed, obviously full of ultra runners. And then I look at them and they're getting 50,000 views, 100,000 views. Courtney the other day showing off poles, but also the story arc of our sport is so amazing. Like the story arc is amazing, whether it's a vertical K or a 25 or a 50. And I think beautifully done media is the power for our sport today. Let's just be real. Traditional media is dead. Like you say, Google search is dead. Instagram and TikTok and stories are everything. And I think if you are a race director, if you're not being incredibly smart and with content, you're missing out. So yeah, it's great to see that you're thinking more about it, Kris.
Which, on a similar note, it's hard to get stories out of China. And so I'm always giving a bit of a rant on the show here that whenever there's an event happening in China, a famous big one, it's very hard to find race results. It's very hard to find any information about this, what's going on there. So I'm very excited to have you on the show as well, Kris, too, because you have apparently Chinese blood. So, maybe you enjoy this country quite a bit. That's great. So what's going on in China? Like, really, like, tell us the trends, the events, the runners, like really giving us a bit of an overview of that huge and very important trail running country.
It's the last 10, 15 years has been an incredible boom of participants in mass participation sports events, first of all. When I joined the company there, it was 2010. We had only 200 participants there in Mongolia. And 5 years later, suddenly there were 1,800. So, and that's what happened. Between 2010, 2015, everything just exploded in China, and is still going on right now. Especially also with COVID, because the Chinese people have also become very much aware of health and staying fit, and they really promote that as well now. So this industry is still growing for sure. Not only running, it's also cycling, it is triathlon, it is other activities.
Okay. Didn't we see, Marcus, wasn't it a few shows ago, correct me on the number, wasn't it 500,000 people ran a marathon in one weekend? Was that right, Marcus?
Correct. Yeah. We had like 500 events on one weekend, roughly 500,000 people on the marathon.
No, I think Marcus, I think it was 50 events they each had 10,000 runners.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, for sure. I think that happens quite often, to be honest, in China. Depends on the season, but yeah, that's normal, I would say. Yeah.
And the Chinese athletes, like, where are they based? Are they based in Shanghai? Are they based in Beijing? Are they based in the mountains? How like, where are the hot spots of Chinese trail and ultra running?
Trail runners, obviously the Beijing area, Shanghai area, and the Guangzhou area, they are very big because that's, megalopolis, right? So you have so many people living there. And outside these cities, you have actually a lot of trails and hills, yeah. Beijing is beautiful, yeah, for trail running, also for cycling and all that. There is also a big community in Chengdu, Sichuan province, and also in Yunnan province, where quite a few trail running events are being held. Yeah? Yunnan is southwest of China, and there you have is bordering with Tibet also. So you go into the Himalayas also from there. So you go to very high altitudes. So there's a great community there that I know quite well because I'm very often in Yunnan for the Grand Fondo cycling event we do there in November. But yeah, I'm into the Beijing community as well because Beijing has always been a bit of my home, together with Dalian in the northeast. That's where I went to study Mandarin. I'm not so familiar with Shanghai, but I know there's a very big community there as well. It's kind of Shanghai, Suzhou, Hangzhou. It's like that triangle. You can even include Nanjing as well there. So these are all big cities with a lot of expats, a lot of runners with disposable income. That's the big scenes. Yeah. You don't find so many runners yet in Inner Mongolia.
I mean, this is the other reality is, apart from COVID getting people out, is just the increase in wealth of people in China. Nobody runs road runs or trail runs unless your life has a certain amount of comfort. Because if you're scrabbling day in, day out just to make ends meet, you're not coming home after working 3 jobs in 18-hour days and going for a run. Let's not kid ourselves. This is a luxury sport, whether it's road running, trail running, jogging, or ultra. And, also, let's be clear, China's gone from a nation that, had the potential to be wealthy to a nation that is wealthy. And I'm glad that people are running, because otherwise they'll import crap American fast food, eat it all, and get big and unhealthy. I'm picking on America. I love America, but you don't want to eat their food.
But that is indeed what was happening in China as well. So I mean, like 20 years ago, everybody was eating McDonald's and KFC, and the Chinese people were getting bigger and bigger, especially the boys. There was also the one-child policy, so they were, emperors, little emperors, as they used to call it. That has been abolished now already from 10 years or something like that. But nevertheless, that was an issue, a health issue for the country. And that's why also the authorities started to focus more and more on sports and on activity, on active lifestyle. And of course in China, when the government says something, the people follow usually, right? So they really have a lot of faith in the government. And, that also helps to explain the boom that we have witnessed in China. And what you say also about the middle class, the middle class 20 years ago, that did not really exist yet, but now it's huge. It's just enormous numbers. Yeah. And I think we're witnessing a little bit the same in Vietnam now. I think Marcus can testify to that. Yeah. In the last 10, 15 years been the same. Yeah. All of a sudden people have money to spend on sports. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What are the ambitions of the Chinese elite athletes? Like, where do they want to go? Where they want to race? What are the goals they have?
There's only one goal that they have in China. That's UTMB. That has been a bit of a frustration for me. So they have no interest in a regional series like Asia Trail Master. There's a few exceptions. Xie Fei, maybe some people will know her. She's in Guangzhou and she's been on the Southeast Asian trails quite often, and she's very popular because she's also very open, and very extrovert. So, but other than her, there's very few Chinese runners, especially elite runners, that we see in Southeast Asia. They all go to UTMB or to one of the UTMB events now as well, if they can get an invitation. So that is the only goal that they have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's driven also, I guess, because of sponsorship, because of opportunities. But I also believe on the other side, you have Chinese brands like Kailas being a very large one, for example, who is now really putting out its marketing dollars to sponsor events, races, and athletes. So it's a combination of brands and athletes wanting to be on the global stage. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Kailas is a very good example of that. Yeah. So they have really, they have done a pitch now towards other countries, but again, it's really focused towards Europe. Yeah. So they have a strong presence in Malaysia now, Kailas, because they have a very active distributor. But most of the money goes to their own events, because they also have an event team that is currently only operating within China, though. And then the money goes to a few runners like Sumaya Buddha from Nepal. She is now a Kailas athlete. And to the races in Europe and the By UTMB or other, the trail majors is now also coming up. You know, the alternative global series now that was set up last year, the World Trail Majors. And maybe we will see one of the Chinese brands there becoming more prominent, because, as you know, the Hong Kong 100 is already having a title sponsor from China now, Anta. So, which is also a brand that is now, I think, is the biggest sports brand now in China, has overtaken Li Ning recently.
Anta is we covered it on a previous episode. I did a bit of a dig into the Anta world, and they are the third largest manufacturer behind Nike and Adidas already for sport shoes. And they have, of course, their own brand. They have Hoka as a brand. So there's a lot of things going on there with the Anta world. So they're growing very fast.
Yep, exactly. And
any other brands you see emerging out of China?
Well, every time I go to China, there's new brands, but many of these brands also very quickly disappear again. I think Kailas is definitely the one that has been, coming onto the main scene, and Anta as well. Those two. Li Ning has been, going through the motions a bit. There's another brand, 361, but I don't think they focus very much on trail running at the moment. But yeah, for the rest, I'm not so. Yeah, I mean, Vibram is of course also based in Guangzhou, in Guangdong province.
I mean, Coros also a Chinese brand. People
Coros
don't know
also,
that.
Shenzhen.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much. I think we're excited to see what's happening in China. Do you think this year, next year, when is it going to be Chinese athlete winning UTMB? We have this bet ongoing here on the One More Care podcast. You can join the bet.
But you mean the real UTMB race, the 100 miles?
Sorry, yeah, the real 100-mile UTMB race in Chamonix.
Anyway, it's possible, yeah. It's hard to say. I mean, within the next 5 years, it's possible. But there's one thing that always sticks to my mind as well. Like 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, people were also saying that within the next decade, there will be a Chinese rider winning the Tour de France. And there's not even one participant from China in the Tour de France. So I don't know. Of course, it's a bit different maybe, but still, it's winning an international race, especially if you are not used to competing so much internationally, is not easy. We see that also in Asia. You have runners in Asia who win every local race, every domestic race, but then they come to the Asia Trailmaster final, and they get their wires get crossed here, because all of a sudden there's John Rionifo there as well, and Sherpa and Christian Jurgensen and Jeff Campbell, and they can't follow these guys, and then they just quit. They don't know what's going on. So you have to learn to compete also. And
to be fair, it took also an American quite some time to win UTMB, and he had to be based there in the area of Chamonix in order to win it. And as an American, and I think it was fairly well covered, he had issues getting the visa just to stay in France for a long time. As an American, I don't want to know how it must be for a Chinese to actually stay in the Alps for longer than a few weeks. That alone is already a huge problem.
It's a great point, I don't think Jim would have won. I mean, look, obviously, if Jim wasn't there, would Zach have won? Yes, and Zach would do it from America, but I think you're right. But look, Kris, it's great to get that overview overall. I definitely wish the Asia Trail Master to grow, and it's great to see that business doing well, and particularly as you come up to your 10th year.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I have one more just comment on what we were just talking about, Hao Ha. Yeah, because she's an Asian runner. She's probably the best Asian runner at the moment, with victory chances at the UTMB event. She will do CCC again. She was in Chamonix also for a month, or at least in Europe for a month last year, and they will do again the same this year. So it's the same thing. It's focus. If you want to win that race, you need focus. Yeah? If you're not Kylian Jornet, yeah, so to speak, Kylian Jornet 10 years ago, if you're not a natural phenomenon, Haha is in a way also a natural phenomenon, but you know what I mean. So
you need focus and you need money. 1 month in France, also, Chamonix is damn expensive.
Exactly.
And I just paid my Airbnb for the 6 nights in Chamonix. Sorry, actually not in Chamonix, nothing available anymore. So I'm staying in one village outside. I'm like, oh my God. Yep, this is not cheap anymore. So yeah, Haha for sure is focused and has luckily Gim behind her and the Mute team, which are helping a lot to make it happen. So we had Gim on the show a few weeks ago, and he's putting all in his eggs in this one basket there, really, and it's amazing how he's pushing it. So really excited for Haha to.
Yeah, I'm also really hoping that she can win. She's at the end of the day, she was our Asia Trailmaster champion 2 years ago, at the beginning of her running journey. So we are part of it. So full support for Haha. Yeah.
No, again, I think I only can add on to Ned's words that thank you so much for what you've done the last 10 years in Southeast Asia and Asia in general. It is, of course, a Pan-Asian event series. Again, I'm not lying if I think you are one of the go-to people for athletes, and as a platform is instrumental to bringing out the likes of Haha to the world. So really thank you for doing that. And anyone out there, again, join the ATM races. I think we can really say they are the crème à la crème, how we say in France, of the Asian races. And yeah, Kris, excited for the future, and we're going to see you soon again. Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
We have wrapped up the part, and now, as usual, we're wrapping up the entire show with Ned's drop of wisdom and inspiration. Let's see what it is today, Ned. What do you have on the docket?
It is not particularly wisdom. Marcus is always very kind. Sometimes I must admit it is wisdom. This time it's very personal. It's just for me. I'm just putting it out there. So it's just like it's quite a short one. I'm just putting it out there. So I have said it, and I'm saying it in a little drop. Of course, it's about backyard. So I'm going to say it. Alrighty, this one's called 50. 50. Have to do it. It's way out there, but there is no point in doing something you can do. Don't reach for what you can. Reach for what you cannot. I have a goal that seems not possible. My goal is 50 backyard loops. That's 50 hours running 6.7K an hour, which is 333K. I have to get to 50, but my best is only 28 backyard loops. But if I do 50 loops, I get to play with the big boys. Harvey, Merrin, Sam, Phil. All of those guys have done 100 loops before. What are we, Sam? We are big boys. At a race next year in Australia called Dead Cow Gully, the very best in the world are coming. Even more than at Biggs, maybe. It's the Super Bowl of backyard. Even the little boys and girls have to do 50 loops just to enter. Imagine turning up at a race where the weakest runner can run 333K. That normally wins other races. Can you imagine you start loop 1 knowing that until loop 50, no one's dropping out? Wild. Day 1, everybody. Day 2, everybody. The game doesn't start until day 3. For me, I hope at the World Championships in October, when I compete for Singapore, I do 50 loops, 333K. I hope Joshua or Abby or Hongwei or Derek or Jasmin, the best of backyard Singapore has to offer, go beyond 50 loops, and I hang on. It's a big goal, but you will have to scrape me off the road to stop me. Because at 57 years old, I don't get many more goes to be my best at this, I think. So 50 it is. 50 at 57. Hey, if I get to 50, why stop? Why not 57 at 57? So 57 it is. Let's go. I'll see you at Dead Cow, Sam. Ned.
Thanks, Nat. That's a big announcement. Thanks for sharing it here on the podcast. I love how you keep changing your goals. Like it used to be 100 minus your age, and then it was just your age. Now it's like 57 or 57. You're moving up, the pole to just longer distances year by year.
Somebody said to me, "Do you feel we're talking about getting old?" And I don't. Of course, I'm slower. I'm obviously slower. I'm not. I am delusional, but I'm not delusional. I'm slower, but I can still run a long way. So, yeah, guys, I'm doing it. So
gotta do it.
That's it. Gotta do it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This means we have episode number 23 in the books. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, we have more shows with exciting guests coming. As I said before, we're going to focus more and more on the business side of things. We're discovering more business topics in the world of trail ultra running. Excited to have more entrepreneurs joining us. This was a great show by Kris to shed light on ATM and China. Thank you, Kris, for joining us again. Best of luck.
Thank you. Yeah. And same to you guys. Best of luck as well with the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.